The CHP Christian Heritage Party of Canada running in this upcoming 2019 election, federal Canadian election for South Shore St. Margaret's area. Big riding west of Halifax. Basically everything from the Bay, east, lower half of Nova Scotia, and it's a big darn riding. Includes Lunenburg and Bridgewater, and Bridgewater's kind of the most central point for the most part. But yeah, congratulations everybody that's able to watch this. You are welcome to share and go through some of the details. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to go through some of the party platform, and if anybody is on here and wants to make comment or look, listen, and ask questions, they are able to do that, which is great. So that's fine. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So you guys are welcome to subscribe, like, and favorite any of those. So that's really good, and you can comment, and I should be able to read your questions and comments as we go. And the videos on Facebook and YouTube will be logged and saved. So that being said, here, let me just move the camera here a little bit, and we'll go from there. So one of the nice things too is, yeah, I have Facebook. The main user is CHPKevin. So CHPKevin, that's the username. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and look for me under those usernames and whatnot. So that is fine. So I'm just taking a quick look at myself on Facebook. That is good. That's up and running really well. And then same thing with YouTube. And go from there, which is really good. And hang on, top issues. Oh, and we'll go to my events. So we are also going to go through and listen to, and I'll go through some of the top topics of choice. Now, it's mentioning, this is interesting. It's beginning. My timing is off because it's, I was going to say from 7:30 on, but from 7 p.m. to 9. So the server details are off or whatnot, so I will have to update that as we go here. So I'm going to be doing that. And the website is chpkevin.ca. So that's always available for you to take a look at things, see all the videos that we come out with and whatnot. Halifax time, local time, universal time. Daylight savings time. Yeah, something's up. And can't. So that's that. So I have to double check my timing on those things. So that's fine. And anyway, so we're going to go through the party platform on a few different things. This is using my cell phone version to stream to 3 different platforms at the same time. I should be able to, a little bit later on, be able to stream, I would think, to stream and on my computer and do the same thing and hit YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, Twitch at the same time, and then be able to do it on my computer so you can see different devices. So this is so that you can see what it's like with a cell phone, and how I can talk to you guys as a MP throughout and actually improve our communication with our MPs. So if I'm elected, I want to have weekly roundtables and discussions where I'm always available to answer people's questions, and people can log in and go from there. So that'd be kind of cool and impressive, right? So that I would like for that to happen, right? That would be really neat to be able to do that. That being said, we'll have to figure out a different way to be able to do that, right? So, but that being said, let's just take a look at party platform. We have basically over 50 issues that we cover, all the way from, and in order, it's Aboriginal affairs, abortion, agriculture, Bank of Canada, carbon tax, CBC, childcare, citizenship, CPP, debt and education, electoral reform. So they're done alphabetically. Environmental and euthanasia, right? Assisted suicide, foreign affairs, freedom of speech, huge one. Any gender issues, government accountability, right? Gun control, where we stand on that. Housing affordability, human rights, immigration, refugees, any issues if Islam and anything's there, or any other cultures that have things that are not conducive to a good Canadian culture, whether that's Israel, our judicial system, right, needs a whole overhaul, which is also under kind of justice as well. Anything labor and employment related, marijuana, other drugs, where we stand on that and whatnot, marriage issues, any media biases, right, mining and resource gathering, our national deficit, anything regarding veteran affairs, right, parental rights, pesticides and herbicides, those issues, any religious freedom issues, resources, and how we, as a party, encourage other parties and us as a Canada to be able to monitor and manage those appropriately. Anything, different Senate issues. There's also on the platform sex education issues, supply management, quotas, marketing boards, things like that. We have topics on and can discuss things with our tariffs, taxation in general. That can be a huge topic in itself. Terrorism, and under W, just kind of general welfare, or like our welfare social programs, things like that. So those are different topics from A to Z, what they are all about. So that is kind of one way of going about things, right? So you can quickly see what the topic is, right? So and then there's kind of the general consensus, the general issue out there, and then where do I stand on such topics, and where does the CHP stand? Where do I stand? We don't necessarily have to pull the party line, but we're expected and sign off on that we actually believe the Bible and follow its best practice principles, right? Which in general is meant for, better mankind and better self-life, better community life, better family life, better business, and better, the biggest community of them all is better country, right? And us as a nation. And how do we become the best neighbor we possibly can to individuals, to other families, to other nations, and how do we be best examples? How do we serve the best? How do we give the best? How can we be the most hospitable nation out there, because those are great principles regardless of what you believe, but they are very strong Christian principles. So regardless of that, those are things that we actually strive for. But I think most people can come on board and choose to go, no, we want to do that. We want to be good with our money. We want to be good stewards, good examples. We want to be edifying. We want to be building up. We want to be known as being productive and not a lazy people. We want to be innovative and industrious and hardworking and disciplined. We as Canadians can actually, we as Canadians can actually espouse to be better. And if we give our country, if we, from the leadership down, aspire people, lead by example, first of all, and then be able to put that into our culture where we want to be duplicatable. We want to have, Canada should be known for a bunch of good and positive things as Canadians, right? And we want to make sure that we are not lost in a melting pot of ideas. But even like, they say, America is, a melting pot. Everybody forms into one idea. Canada is a mosaic of different ideas and cultures and backgrounds and religion and people groups and all kinds of stuff. And we try to figure out how to best come about and be there. So, are you from Canada? I am from Canada. So I am running in Nova Scotia's riding called South Shore St. Margaret's. And that is west of Halifax. So, master. Okay, made. Murder. Okay, excellent. So you're coming in via, let's see here, via YouTube. How do you actually, I'm actually a little curious as to how you found me, say, on YouTube. That's very interesting. I'd be kind of curious. So if you're on YouTube and you just commented, I'd love to know how you found me, because I know I'm live on Facebook. Technically, that's live. Yes, my YouTube channel is public, but we weren't quite broadcasting anything quite yet, but that's fine. So there's that. So that's awesome. So either way, like I said, going to go through some of the main issues. On my YouTube channel, you will see my kind of top 5 issues, and they're like top 5 or 6 main kind of big issues. And I actually think that they're actually like at the heart of some of the issues. So, so many people talk about, oh, a little bit of this tax increase or change or this or that, or housing issue, or raise the minimum wage, or social net programs. Well, technically, all of those things stem from some very root causes. So, hey, excellent, you just subscribed, so that's good stuff, man. So if you're in Canada, well, even if you're not in Canada, welcome to the channel. I've been making relatively a bit of content over the last many years, getting in anticipation for this election. Definitely not where I want to be. In terms of a team or being as prepared as I want to. The election technically is on. I'm just a few days away from getting ballots ready, and I still need a couple other things, an official officer, and then we can get the name on the ballot, get our bank account all set up, and then we can receive official donations and whatnot. So thank you. You're from India. So welcome from India. That is awesome. So we are in free elections. So we're lucky. We're in Canada. We do have indeed democracy, where we can, every 4 years, we vote in different parties. And we primarily have kind of 2 main parties, a supposed right wing and very strong left wings and central type parties. We have a party called the Conservative Government, Party of Canada, the Liberal Party. We have an NDP, New Democratic Party. They're supposedly central. We have a Quebec Party, a province, that literally votes. They try to vote in their own people so that they get enough power in Canada to try to leave Canada. Yeah, very crazy party that way, in the fact that it seems like it's very provincial minded. Even it's built into their name. They're not necessarily intending to do much for outside of Canada other than for Quebec and watching out for Quebec's interests. So I'm actually running for the CHP. So you asked, one of the questions was, do I support the left or the Liberals? The Liberals are very left on the scale of what they call left and right in the governmental kind of anywhere from complete government control to chaos and no government, left and right. You have the Liberals being very strong government, very big government, big spending, not very fiscal responsible, printing unlimited amounts of money. And then you kind of have what is typically your conservative type governments more on the right of central is what they call it. And they're supposed to be tighter with their money, more reserved with some of their ideas. Liberals are for giant, big spending programs. So I'm running for the Christian Heritage Party. It stands on Christian principles. So, yes, it looks religious. And in Canada, it's really funny because in Canada, religion's actually really not talked about very much in government. Yet there's tons of parties around the world that, well, first of all, you absolutely can't distinguish morals and have religion out of yourself and out of your governance. There's the big mistake where they say, keep church and state separate. That actually is a one-way thing where it's keep your government out of your church, but you can have your morals of your religion in government, and it's fine to be to run on those and to be proud of those things. I'm actually one of the big sticking points I'm running on, and CHP is electoral reform. And right now we are first past the post. So that's kind of like your oldest way of voting. You take all your people, whoever gets the most votes gets kind of like the one seat. And that kind of, in an old school way, that makes sense, right? But it also has a ton of problems with it. First past the post, meaning that it's susceptible to what they call gerrymandering, which is like grouping your voting areas into areas that kind of lean left or lean right, things like that, or lean toward a certain party. Or you actually throw away your votes because maybe you want to vote for number 2, 3, 4, 5th guy, but maybe the number 1 and 2 powers are the most powerful, whatever colors they are, blue and green or blue and red or whatever. We'll say blue and red because that's kind of both in Canada and U.S. There's the blue party and the red party, and they fight. But maybe you're a different party color, and you have good ideas, and people want to vote for you, so they vote for you, but then they take away votes from one of the big parties, so then the bad party gets in. So then you're really ticked off that you voted, and then your enemy of the enemy didn't get in, because you really didn't want the bad guys to get in, so you vote for the enemy of your enemy versus the person you want to vote for. So we are all for electoral reform where you can have a bunch of different ways where you can have like runoff systems where you can vote for first, second, third person. So if your first guy doesn't get in, your vote goes to number 2 and goes to number 3, number 4. That's a great system where your vote actually matters. There's systems where you vote for, you actually kind of almost have 2 votes, where you vote for a person and you also vote for a party, and then you know, your person can win the seat, but then also all the votes get tallied up for what party you want, and maybe a whole bunch of small parties can actually get a few seats. And that's an amazing way to bring more diverseness to our government. So that is a huge thing. The Liberals, under the scummy leadership of Justin Trudeau, he wrecked a whole bunch of people in there. I'm sure there's a few good people in the Liberal Party, but when you have a leader permeate down through the ranks and the culture of the party to outright lie to the Canadian people, run on the policy that you're going to have electoral reform, and then choose to abandon it, and had no intention of actually having electoral reform. Because one of the things is with first past the post, it always devolves down to 2 parties, a somewhat left and a somewhat right, and they're polarizing and they fight, very divisive. You end up being bullies. So this is very anti-Canadian. And let me explain. So first past the post is very anti-Canadian. You know, Canada prides itself on being a mosaic, a group of a whole bunch of different people where people can come together, but also maintain their cultures and identities. And, you know, yes, you want to adopt the Canadian way of things. And if anything, some of the Canadian way of things is being inclusive of a bunch of different ideas and cultures and ideas. We got a pretty bad history. Even you know, there's Germany, Hitler, and the Nazis trying to wipe out an entire culture, and there's throughout human history, there's been times where cultures have tried taking out cultures. Well, we got some of our own bad history as well. We both have been involved in the slave industry, and then even post World War II, believe it or not, we got crazy amounts of trying to wipe out our indigenous cultures across Canada. It's bad enough. You know, it is what it is that, you know, we've all come to share this land. You know, some call it colonization and pushing them out and stuff. But it goes far beyond even that. It goes even in our current history. You could argue 200, 300 years ago, so-and-so, our ideas were different. But, man, in the last 40, 50, 60 years, we've done some pretty scummy stuff as a country. So that's pretty interesting. Part of the electoral reform, I would love to have some different Indigenous groups represented in Canada's parties, and have a bunch of people sitting at tables. So that in itself is pretty amazing. So the CHP is for that. The Liberals are anti that. They are for the bully tactics. They're for pushing people around. They love getting in power, majority of power, being a bully, being not inclusive, not being just everybody has to follow our way, or it's the highway, or you're the enemy. And they don't like other ideas. They don't like taking things slow. And, you know, same thing with the Conservatives. They get into power. They want to be the big bully as well. And I'm all for a bunch of voices at the table, right? And having our government reflect Canada and the makeup of the Canadian people. Right now, we have, you know, typically 2 bullies pushing everybody around, and then they ram their ideas down everybody's throat while trying to undo the past bullies' terrible tactics. So they waste time, energy, money by pushing in stupid stuff, and then they get extreme. you know, in their ideas, and sometimes they're way on this side, way on that side, because they have to step away and be separate of the other party. So anyways, so the CHP, Christian Heritage Party, is all for electoral reform, a made-in-Canada solution. Getting back to some economics in my top 5, and talking about the root of problems. I am a huge proponent, talking about tax reform. There's a few things actually revolving around tax reform, and technically, it's one of the greatest issues that every country's facing right now, and we're steaming straight ahead over a cliff here soon enough, and we need to put on the brakes and be aware of some certain things. Some people have coined it the financial matrix, where it's kind of like Matrix the movie, but we are locked into this program that's running for us, and it's enslaved the Canadian people. It's enslaved the people, the families. It's changed everything. We think we need higher and higher wages, but we got to get inflation under control. Over the past many decades, our governments, the Liberals and the Conservatives, have actually made inflation be a good thing. And it's like, what? Never in history has a government being able to unlimitedly inflate their money and succeed. And Canada thinks so, and U.S. is thinking so, and it's never happened in human history. And then even then, the only reason why it hasn't happened to some of our countries currently is because they've been able to hide it by pegging kind of the world currency to the American dollar. So then that allows America and Canada to kind of inflate our money hugely, and yet it's inflating the world's money at the same time, and not just the necessarily individual country. Doesn't matter if I increased your wage to $30 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 an hour. Those who control the purse strings can make that money seem worthless and pointless, and worth less and less and worthless. So raising minimum wage is not the issue. We have a draining hole out of the bucket, and inflation is actually a hidden tax. So the CHP thinks tax is technically legalized theft. We as a party actually don't agree with theft. We actually think taxes is theft. And as such, you want to minimize taxes as much as possible. Small government, small taxes, minimal budgets. So that's one thing. But you also got to radically change our tax system. The income tax system is atrocious. It has a million loopholes in it. The rich keep getting richer, and I'm going to come back to that too. The Liberals and the Conservatives love the rich getting richer. They absolutely love it. They do it every single day. When they're in power, when they're not in power, they're doing it every single day. They absolutely love it. And, the Conservatives have been in power lots, and the Liberals have been in power lots, and they absolutely love it. And they've been inflating Canada's money, and the rich are getting richer every day, and the poor are getting poorer, and they've done this on purpose. And so we have what is called the fair tax system. The fair tax system is the elimination of income tax. If you make $5,000, you come home with $5,000. You make $3,000, $2,000, you go home with $2,000. And then you can start spending your money from there. And then on top of that, there's a flat tax on the majority of goods and services, on things, and there's a great list of certain things that wouldn't be taxed or not taxed. And then on top of that, it's a progressive tax, meaning you don't necessarily want to tax the poor, right? Because that kind of looks bad optics. And, you can call it unfair. You don't want to tax the poor. And, okay, fair enough. So even poor people, you set what a poverty level is. Hey, if you make less than $12,000, $20,000 a year, you're poor. You're considered poor. So you don't want to tax that first $20,000. So, or whatever number is their poverty level, right? And so then we actually have a system called a prebate check. So it's kind of like a universal basic income, which so many on the left, big government wants, is universal basic incomes. Get paid to do nothing. Well, our system has a component of that in there, which actually it's 100% fair, 100% transparent, and it's for all Canadians, where you untax the poor with what they call a prebate check. So whatever flat tax would have been on your monthly spending, so if you had, like, just for easy math, if you had your rate at $12,000, and hello, welcome to this show from Twitch. That's great. Hi there. So we're so I'm just going through a couple things right now on the fair tax system that the CHP party wants to promote. And actually America is further along in pushing this along, because it's tax reform, getting rid of the crazy income tax system where the rich get richer. There's a million loopholes. It's like the most complex tax codes ever. You're wasting more and more money trying to punish the good people while you're letting the more lawyers you have and the bigger accountants you have, the more money you actually, or the less money you actually pay. It's stupid. You can be multi-billion-dollar companies and you can spend only millions of dollars in taxes, if anything, because of all the loopholes. So the Fair Tax Act eliminates income tax, gives you a flat tax, untaxes the poor. And I was just explaining that, let's say if you make $12,000 or less in a year, that's poverty level. Fair enough. So 12 divided by 12, or 12,000 divided by 12 months, $1,000. So then, just for math, I'm just throwing out a number. So if your flat tax rate was 20%, so 20% of $1,000, $200. So everybody, like every working kind of people of working age and whatnot, would actually get a $200 check every month. So your family, if you had a family of 4 or something like that, you would probably get a check. Family 3 or 4, you get a check to $400, $500, $600, whatever that is. Okay, hello, yes. Interesting. Welcome. So, and so one of those things, hang on. So one of those things that the fair tax does is so on top of coming home with your whole entire paycheck. So let's excuse me, let's say you make $2,000 a month. The first $1,000 a month in my example would be untaxed. With a prebate check, we'd give you $200. So you'd come home with $2,000 because you made $2,000. No tax on it. And we'd give you a $200 check. $200 or $300 or $400 check. But let's just say you're an individual. And then what you do there... hang on. What you do there is... so you have whatever. You have your $2,200. You can do whatever you want. If you wanted to save money... hang on. 834... hang on one second, guys. Hang on. Okay, this is gonna be the first run of the new system here, so that is good. I'm quite impressed with how things are going. Hang on. And I'm just doing a couple things on the browser. Sorry, guys. And, okay. Hang on. I'm just trying to log in here. So that's one of the things that you got to be careful about. is enter the code. Hang on. Is the Fair Tax. So the Fair Tax Act actually allows you to eliminate your income tax issues. It deals with you wouldn't have to, if you're able to put more money in your pocket, you're fine. Number two is by eliminating yeah, hey guys, you can't hear me, hang on 1 second. You can't hear me. Let's see. I'm pretty sure. No, yeah, you guys can hear me fine. That's interesting. That's not bad. So, anyways, that's going fine. But yeah, so one of the biggest issues is hang on. I got to hang on. Let me go. Yeah, so one of the things too is right now. Tons. He's in the house, yeah. Okay, guys. You guys are interesting. Twitch. So let's just figure a few things out here. Let's just see here. Yeah, so anyways, we're going through the different policy platforms and whatnot. So that's good. I'm glad you guys are watching, having fun chatting. So that's fine. Now, one of the things too is let's go into some of the platform issues. So yeah, so electoral reform, inflation, by eliminating inflation, like by not encouraging inflation, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. So buddy, you guys are definitely gotta be careful, man. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that's that. Now one of the interesting things too is yeah, so that's kind of a good thing. So that being said, we've dealt with now inflation. The Bank of Canada should be used by the Canadian government. the times that we are going to borrow money, the times that we create money, should be borrowed and at least kept within house. It's bad enough. It's bad enough that yeah, it's bad enough people are already doing stuff. Or no, like it's bad enough there's inflation and hang on one second. Yeah, interesting. So, that being said, not so good. Now, inflation, on the other hand, what you want to do there is instead of borrowing, like Canada, our two governments, our Liberals and our Conservatives, have wanted they want the rich to get richer. So instead of using the Bank of Canada to borrow money from, we actually borrow from private banks and pay them all of Canada's hard-earned interest. When in fact, even, and you know, on top of letting the banks create unlimited money, Canada has the gall to give them borrow money, like borrow us money, and we actually have to pay them back with real profit. With, you know, we pay into the private banks' profit with real Canadian assets. And that's just unfortunate. So, what actually happens is, you know, what actually happens is that bit of a loss here. When you inflate your money, you just make everything else worth less. So, number one, stop using private banks to lend from, or to borrow money from. And number two is you want to stop, you know, letting them print unlimited amounts of money. So those things go into housing pricing increase, childcare increases. We actually love when we want to increase the value of, you know, people's wages. The CHP is for true improvement to workers' income, true income increases with true value in their money. You know, heck, you could, you know, we'd love if people could go back to the days where, you know, people worked if they wanted to work. Right now, if you work, most people have to dual income and rent and not own, because they are run up against the wall of inflation and they don't even know it. And when you run up against the wall of inflation, you run into things where, like, you know, 12 hot dogs are now 8 hot dogs. 12 packs of buns are 6 packs of buns. You know, cans of pop and soda and stuff, you know, they used to be bigger and now they're smaller, same prices, right? So you can only increase price so much before people complain, and then you shrink. The other way is you keep shrinking the packaging and packaging and packaging. So just inflation in groceries, your money is getting less and less and less food. Your big boxes of cereal are small boxes of cereal, because people at first freak out if you start increasing the prices too high. You go, if this thing costs $2 and then it's $3 and $4 and $5, they start complaining. So maybe it goes to two and a quarter, $2.50, 2.30, or 2.40, 2.50, 2.60, 2.70. Oh, now you start shrinking the packaging so there's less items, right? So you got to eliminate inflation, because inflation is also the thing that's increasing, making it harder and harder to have two then incomes. If you have to have two incomes, now you're raising a family, needing money to raise a family, so you feel like you have to both work. Then you need your family taken care of, so then you complain and whine to the government, hey, I need affordable daycare. Well, affordable daycare, well, what happens if we make your income more valuable? Would it be more valuable if one person can earn what two people could right now? Is that more valuable to you guys? Perfect. Right? Because then that gives the other person, the family, options to work less, or one person work, the other person stays at home, raises the family, and then you could switch back and forth. Doesn't matter who. We got lots of great laws on board nowadays in Canada, whether it's male or female, for maternity leave, right? So there's some protections in place for even for males to be the ones that stay at home, raise the children, or asked to be let off, or asked to leave work to raise their kid for a little while, and still have options to go back to work. But maybe they don't want to, because if one person can earn enough income, you can actually work less, and you don't need as much daycare, or you just outright make more money so that you can afford a fair market daycare value. So again, that comes down to inflation. When you inflate things, your home prices go skyrocketing high. When you have unlimited money flooding the market, if something was up for auction, if I was auctioning this phone, whatever, a few $100 smartphone, fair enough. You go and I poll the audience and say, hey, how much would somebody be willing to give me for this smartphone? Okay, whatever the amount of money each person had. Eventually, somebody would bid on something, it might be a few $100s, fair enough. But now, if I gave half of you an extra $1,000, I just, gave it to you, and we ran the auction again, how much would that phone price go up? Well, of course it would. Right? So because I just gave you guys like unlimited amount of money, or I gave you a bunch of money, gave a whole bunch of you some money, so the value, like what you bid on this phone, would go up. Same thing is with the housing market. If the banks give and give and give a ton of money that they had no, they virtually made it up. The banks did not have that money to give you. And if they give that to you, then they can spend what they want on that house. Because a whole bunch of the population just got a whole bunch of money that didn't exist before. So then the pricing of the houses just keep going up and up and up. And then the houses keep going up. So the people talk to the bank and they need bigger and bigger and bigger loans. And they borrow more and more money. And the banks are more than happy creating unlimited profit, because not only do the banks get to create virtual profit, if they lend out $100,000, well, that's $100,000 of profit. Then they demand interest from you. So that's $100,000 and all the payment fees and regulation and stuff. So they have $100,000 profit plus. And they have the collateral, whereas if you don't pay it off, they can take your home that's valued at whatever price it is. So they, by virtual typing in numbers in a computer, got access to real money, like, money, hard-earned money, or they got access to actual land. All virtually, right? For no reason. And the conservative government are the ones that passed the no fractional reserve banking. So banks are able to, there's no cap on what the banks are allowed to lend. It was bad enough when, if it's 90%, 10 to 1, or 95%, 96, 97%, that was almost virtually unlimited printing. But when the Bank of Canada, or when the Conservatives passed laws to make it not be a fractional reserve system, gone. So fractional reserve system needs to be gone, eliminated. We got to start borrowing from the Bank of Canada only, and we'll write, we can write rules in place where, no, if you're the government of Canada, you borrow from the government of Canada. You don't borrow from no private bank. Number 2, you eliminate this whole inflation thing. You eliminate the ability for the banks to create money. Stop the banks from creating the money. If you're gonna have money created, have the government of Canada do it. Not ideal, but we're trying to rein in Pandora's box here. We're trying to fix a problem that is just multi-headed hydra here. Right? You cut one head off and a bunch more kind of pop up in its place. So we need to put a few things into place to start stemming the crazy flow. And that's starting to get to the roots of the problems, because inflation is what's causing, for the most part, a ton of your provinces to keep increasing its taxes. Because if they don't increase their taxes, and the numbers leave them behind, and construction projects cost more, and everything costs more and more, well, their numbers aren't inflating with the same level that the banks are printing the money, creating the money. So everybody seems to have to raise their taxes. And yet your wage doesn't go up with the same rate as inflation, or it just doesn't. So you actually are falling further and behind. You're running up a down escalator. It's going faster than you can run, and you can't run all the time either. An economy is not red hot. Excuse me, it's smoking all the time to even outpace inflation. There are inflation and there are natural inflation and deflations. Completely okay. If the price goes down because abundance goes up, or technology continues to improve to find efficiencies to make things cheaper, that's okay if prices go down, because other people will find other methods to make more money, or that's what innovation is. It spurs on incentive to find ways to find, if I can sell my widgets for a nickel less because I was able to make them for a nickel less, well, hopefully I'll sell more widgets than the next guy. So by actually me making it cheaper for Canadians selling widgets, I actually made more money, and it's win-win. But if you have a government letting people spend and create unlimited amount of money, flooding the market, then people have supposedly some money to be thrown around, so the price of widgets seems to not just go down, but actually keep increasing. Well, then the price, excuse me, I'm not actually getting more money per se for my widgets. I'm actually, or selling more widgets. You're hurting the entire economy. So anyways, that's inflation. Now another issue So yeah, electoral reform, and then economic reform is the Fair Tax Act, which is going to lead into my next point, which radically changes everything. No income tax, flat rate, super simple. You're going to save billions and billions of dollars in paperwork in our country. Corporations going to absolutely love Canada. And yeah, we're going to go from there. Now, with the passing of the Fair Tax Act, theoretically it doesn't have to change with the Fair Tax Act, but it kind of part and parcel. If you eliminate income tax, you eliminate any income tax rebates that you need. Makes sense, right? So if you're no longer taxing income, you don't need an income tax rebate. That being said, right now, all our charities, CRA charities, anyone that's actually registered with the CRA, which gives you the ability to give out tax donation receipts, which then people turn in for a percentage of their taxable income rebated back to them. But when you become a CRA charity and you get the income tax receipts, what you've actually done is converted all of your assets, all your private assets that you used to own, you've converted yourself to a government agency that you have to operate under their rules and regulations. You can't say certain things, and you have to say certain things, and you have to do certain things. You are now a government agency. Whether you are a church, mosque, temple, religious group, almost every religious organization has given up their freedoms of religion and has converted to a government agency called a CRA charity. So they've ceased to become a church, temple, mosque, hall, advocacy group, whatever it is. They have converted their freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and they have converted themselves to follow the list and rules of the CRA charity status, the Charity Act. They've converted themselves. All their private assets have now converted to be public assets. They are now the government's. So on ceasing of being a charity, you have usually less than 1 year to give away all your assets away. Or if you want to keep your assets, your building, your church, your computers, your whatever you've raised money to buy, if you want to keep any of that, you actually have to, you get what they call a revocation tax, and they assess you, and the tax is at 100% of 100% of your assets. So if you have a nice small white picket fence church and a bit of land, parking, worth $2 million, well, that's actually the government's. You spent 20 years raising the funds for it. You've paid it off. You did not pay off nothing. It all belongs to the government. And if you ever stopped being a charity, or you ever screwed up and you said certain things or you didn't say certain things, they can pull the rug out from underneath you, cease you being a charity, and then you have less than a year to get rid of all your assets. Give them away to another charity or buy them back. So if you spent 20 years raising $2 million, you now have less than a year to raise $2 million to buy back the asset that you just spent 20 years paying for. Pretty crazy stuff. So then most churches and mosques and other religions, they fall in line with the list and rules of being a charity, which I'm okay with and I agree with, but I don't think many Canadians know this. Most Canadians think a church is a church and we have freedom of religion and all stuff. We actually do, but not if you're a CRA charity. Number two is most people think, it's the church buying the building or the mosque or this or that. Being good stewards of raising money, you know, buying equipment, buying marketing, buying whatever resources to get whatever message it is that you want out. Good on whatever charity it is. I'm not actually for or against any charity in this particular topic. But I'm fighting for the freedom of every charity, of every church and religion, not just the Christian religion. I'm fighting for everyone. I don't have to agree with it, but I'm also fighting for your freedom to actually be a true, to be actually practice your religion in freedom. Yeah, even the Mormons. Yeah, no, it's very true. I'm fighting for every religion. So the Mormons have tens of thousands of their churches and temples or whatever you want to call them. If you type in Google CRA charity list, type in your local Mormon church, and almost guaranteed you should find it in the list. And if it's in the list, that means the government owns their property. Right? It's pretty crazy stuff. Scientologists, yep, if they are a CRA charity. Right? Hang on. Let me I had a database open, but here, let me open up the if I did this different and I streamed this from my computer, I would be able to switch channels to you guys. But I'm doing it on my cell phone because I'm broadcasting 3 different ways. But I'm going to do it via the, if I'm at home, I'm going to do it via the OBS next time and fix it. And then I can switch to my desktop. But if you type in Google CRA Canadian charity list, let's see, Canadian charities, the list of charities and other qualified donations. You click on charities, and let's just type in Scientologists. Yeah, this is an old Logitech. Oh, this particular keyboard's a Logitech 110, older gaming keyboard. It's got USB and headphone jack on it. I'm talking on my cell phone right now because I'm using MobCrush. Usually, to multi-stream, multicast, it costs a lot of money. But for whatever business model, Mobcast is doing it for free. Pretty damn impressive. And I've been using them. So hang on, let's see here. Let's type in Scientology or something. Hang on. Hang on. I'm just trying to type in Scientology. They may or may not be a charity. I forget. I'd have to look up my spreadsheet too. But you kind of have to know parts of the name of the church or something. Yeah, let me just type in Science World, Health Science. Yeah, so there's lots of science organizations, science charities, and things like that. That's fine. Hang on. And then you can see if they're suspended, designation, public, charitable organization, advancement of religion. Okay, hang on. There's Islamic sciences, Christian science ones, Christian Science Society, Christian Science Society, Hamilton. Hang on. I don't know if that's Scientology or not, or if Christian Science is a different... I'm not that familiar, of course, with Scientology and whatnot. But the point is, if they're on the CRA charity list, if they give donations, if you give money, and you get a tax receipt, or a promise of a tax receipt, then they are a CRA charity and the government owns them. And they are not allowed to speak for or against any government, for or against any law of any level of government, including other countries. So if you are against slavery, right? If you're maybe a church, a religious organization, and you're against slavery, and you're kind of wanting to stop slavery in another country, that is actually stepping outside the bounds of being a charity. And you run the risk of having your charitable status taken. And the government, the government a lot of time turns a blind eye to it because you're growing your assets. Then at any time, the government can take your assets anytime that there's public outcry, and they'll turn off your charitable status, tell you that you've screwed up, and take your churches or your organizations, take your stuff. And if, yeah, they can do a bunch of funny things. Like there's the tax, and if you keep your stuff, they'll charge you the revocation tax, 100% charge on 100% of the asset value. And if you don't pay it up, they can throw your board of directors in jail, right? If you don't pay your taxes in Canada, you can be thrown in jail. That's just the law. So they can actually either take all your property, and if you don't give it all away, well then the government can throw your board in throw them away. So that's not so good. So I want to convert all charities from private or public assets back to private. I want to give freedom back to every one of our charities. I don't think the government's hand should be, some people say separation of church and state. Well, yeah, the government should not be involved in church-type matters, religious-type matters. So why does the government control and own all of our church's property? And why do they restrict their ability to speak on whatever topics they want to speak about? Doesn't mean you agree with them. Even Christianity is a big, giant umbrella. And there's a ton of Christian doctrines and groups and denominations. I don't agree with every one of those people's stuff, and they're even using the same word, Christian. I would probably argue against a lot of them, but I will fight for their freedom to say whatever they want to say, and to be more vocal about it, and to practice their freedom of religion, because right now in Canada they can't. Because if they are a CRA charity, they have, it's their fault though. It's the charities. It's both the government has changed the rules over the years, and it's the charity's fault for agreeing to the rules year after year after year. And they are under, like churches and religious groups love money. You need money to further your message across, right? I was in a piss poor church. We ran on super old computer equipment. It'd be nice to get a little bit of money to add a camera, or, spread out the news, or buy for internet, or whatever. You need money to do stuff. Duh, that's a good thing. If people want your message out, they'll contribute to the cause, right? Like, look at just Twitch. Hey, why private? So how are Christians not allowed freedom of religion in Canada? Okay, Perfect question. That people think Christians have freedom of religion. We do. As individuals, we have freedom of religion. Churches have freedom of religion. But when a church, temple, mosque, whatever, when, we'll say church because we're talking Christians here, when a church, well, okay, when a church, for the most part, house of worship, becomes a CRA charity, they actually convert to the rules of being a CRA charity. They give up their freedom of religion and take on the rules of being a charity. The moment they sign, if they have $50,000 of assets, right? Because usually what will happen, a small church will grow and grow and grow, usually in people's homes, 10, 20, 30, 40 people. It starts getting too big. Then they rent a place for a year or two or something. Then they start, and then right around, somewhere in between there, usually most people go, hey, we should become a charity so that we can offer tax donations so that that will encourage people to give more money. That's probably the way it almost always works. And it is true. When you actually give more, when you give tax receipts, you're actually kind of we as people that give money are trained like seals to think that somehow a charity is legit if they give a tax receipt. And if they don't give a tax receipt, like, I'm not going to give my money there. Like, if I give a street person $20, a bum on the street, $20, am I expecting a receipt back? No, either I give $20 or I don't give $20. $5, $10, $1, whatever. Either I give or I don't give. Why is it, if I believe in a church or something, why is it that if I give them money, somehow I give me my tax receipt? Right? That's crazy. So it's partly our fault, people too, whereas if a church did it in an ideal situation, you start a church, grow it, ask for donations, people give money, never be a CRA charity. You could do and say what you want, practice your religion within the grander scale rules of laws of Canada, but freedom of religion, you're allowed to say that, to do and say those things. When you become a CRA charity, you are not allowed to be for or against any government, for or against any rules, for or against any party of any level. You're not allowed to, if you hate the church, there's some Christian churches that are for or against abortion. You actually, as a charity, can't comment for abortion, and you can't comment against abortion. As a CRA charity, you're not allowed. And in some ways, I get why you're like, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to speak on government matters or against the laws if you're receiving donations and tax receipts. I actually get it. But I'm against the whole, there's no reason to be a charity. I'm actually against every single religion that is a CRA charity, because I actually think, because now they've given up their freedom of religion. I don't know, I can only speak from the kind of the Christian point of view. I would say, Christianity has a ton to promote and a ton to demote, a ton of things that we'd love to talk about and a ton of things that we should be against, things that we should be for and things that we should be against. And the church is pretty silent on almost everything because they're not allowed, because they are actually a government organization and they are no longer a church. That is why you almost hear, you don't hear almost, religion in Canada is basically dead in the open because they're all charities and they're not actually really religious organizations, and they're not practicing their religious freedom because they're not allowed, because they are a government charity. So anyways, that's very frustrating. I wish that wasn't so, and people can talk to me afterwards on that. It's one of my favorite topics. I've literally spent years and years and years and years documenting this. I go around to churches talking about it. I have 5-minute presentations, 15-minute presentations, hour-long presentations. And actually, the seminar that I'm putting together is literally like, I could imagine it. It's looking up to be like, 15 hours, because I systematically go through it and back it up if I'm as a Christian. And again, I can only approach this as a Christian from the Bible. You cannot be a CRA charity, because a good Christian church should be for things and against things. And you're not allowed as a charity. I'm being super vague, right? We should be for things and we should be against things. That's pretty vague, but at the same time, when you're not even allowed that, then it's crazy. So there's billions and billions of dollars. I have the spreadsheet of all registered religions in Canada, and I have exactly how much money they have. I have their taxes every year. You have access to their taxes. You can actually go onto that charity list, search up your charity, i.e. church or temple or mosque, search them up. You can actually see what they made, see what the pastor made, because usually they list the top 10 people that get paid, and then they list in pay brackets what the person got paid. You can see what each person basically got paid, because usually the pastor gets paid the top, and a lot of time they might be the only paid person on staff. Some small churches, there's almost nobody gets paid. Fair enough. And then on big churches, well, a ton of people get paid. On the bigger the church, you can have tons of people on staff. And you can see the different pay brackets of the top 10 people. You can see how much money they take in. And it's because of the love of money that they've given up their rights to be a church. So if you like me, subscribe to me. CHPKevin.ca will be my website. I'm building it right now. I got a splash page turned on right now because I'm just finishing it up, and it's still got some default content on there from the template that I got to take off. It'll be up later tonight. But either way, one of my big things too is communication. So this is being broadcast live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, and I've gotten comments from all three. So Sam, how abouts did you actually come and find me? Because I'm kind of curious about that. Yes, I know that YouTube channel is live, but I also know that my channel is fairly new, kind of small. So I'm just always kind of curious as to how abouts that happened. So hang on. I'm just logging into my... Hang on. I have a hard time thinking and doing stuff at the same time. I have a super long crazy password. CHP, okay. 18 videos. That's because I had like a million tests today. So yeah, so Sam, that's pretty awesome that you're saying that. That's good. I'm a subscriber. Found your first video while looking for inflation statistics. Okay. Excellent. Well, no, that's good. So either way, I'm kind of committing to wanting to do this Sunday night or something like that, regardless of if I get voted in or not this election. Because I also want to build up a following regardless. Because I have important things to say. I think I could create an entire foundation around trying to blow people's minds all across Canada. U.S. is somewhat similar too. when you sign up to be, I think, what is it they call like a 401c charitable organization or something, I think you needlessly sign up for certain rules that actually churches in the US also have a ton of freedom too. In fact, I think they have more freedom than they do in Canada. But by signing up for charitable status, you actually give up your rights, which is, like, again, really dumb. I'm actually 100% against all churches being charities. Actually, now get this. In my studies, when I was doing this, I ran across a charity that started to speak up for suicide, euthanasia, right? Like doctor-assisted suicide. That charity actually got its status removed because they're actually speaking against the current laws of Canada. They were like speaking for or against, right? And at the time, a few years back, it became legal just recently, right? But this happened a few years back, and they had their status removed because they're speaking up against current laws. And they were a charity, and they're not allowed to do that. And in some ways, I agree with that. So that's not even a religious thing. And in fact, I'm like, I would fight for them to have their status and their assets converted back to being private. Even though I'm against their message, I'm for their freedom. And yeah, so they lost their status. But under the Fair Tax Act, where there is no more income tax, you actually don't even need technically charitable status anymore, because you don't need your donations. What are you writing a receipt for if there's no more income tax? Right? So if I want to give $5 to somebody or this or that, then it is what it is. And there has to be rules in place for certain things that, like, for example, as an individual person, you can only give $1,600 to your party of choice or individual candidate, right? You can't give $1,600. I can't, if I'm a millionaire, I can't give $10,000 to this guy and $10,000 to this, $10,000 to this. No, there's a limit, and I'm sure people get around that. But in Canada, we do have certain limits in place where corporations can't be donating to government parties, and people have to support parties, and you have to limit that. You can do like husband and wife, but you can't just, hey, I'm going to give tons of money to a certain party. So we have certain rules in place, and we're not talking about changing those ones. But the CHP is all about fairness across everybody. And when I say something's fair for the poor, middle class, and the rich. And you could say that's unfair, but fair is fair, right? Yeah, so why do organizations want charitable status to begin with? Honestly, the only reason, and I know, and I've heard pastors say this, I've interviewed, again, I've done years of research on this, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Is I've interviewed pastors, and they become a charity because the optics look better. If you have two churches, and one gives a tax receipt, and the other doesn't, which one are you giving your money to? I didn't get into the message. One might be watered down, silent on important matters, non-passionate, and they stay in their little bubble of good topics that they're allowed to talk about and not step outside the lines of being a charitable status. Or you can have a passionate church that talks their mind, that wants to be a world changer, wants to be light, speaks. I call it witness and a watchman. We're supposed to be watchmen. Watchmen on the walls. You're supposed to call out evil. Enemies coming to your country, to your gates. When there's evil, when there's bad guys, when there's stupid behavior, you call out evil. You call out wrong. You call it out. You warn people. Hey, watch it, guys. Don't steal. Watch the slippery slope. Watch out for this. If you start this, it gets closer and closer. You play with fire, you get burned. That's being a watchman. A good church also needs to be a witness. Witness is bringing the good news. Bringing, hey guys, yes, the enemy is here, but we can do this. These are good tactics. These are good things. These are good topics to talk about. These are good best practices on how to be self-disciplined, how to run a family, how to run a business, how to run a country, how to run a nation, how to run, groups of people, how to treat your neighbor, how to treat your enemy. We're supposed to love our enemy. We can't. So you can have a church that's passionate and able to say whatever they want within their freedom of religion, or a church that doesn't and is silent, except for like the little topics they talk about occasionally, and they'll slip in once in a while, they'll slip in something and they don't get in trouble for it. But the government also doesn't pull their status, because if these guys keep growing, the government knows they can pull the status of these guys at any time and take all their assets. Trust me, there will come a time in Canada's history, near future here, where the government of Canada, the House, will always win. Because the laws, the charitable laws, are crazy. The CRA Charity Act, they have a ton of rules. They're fairly basic, like they're in plain English. A ton of rules. Some of them are very vague on purpose, and some of them are very specific. And in all honesty, the government could probably pull the charitable status of any church and any religion it wanted to. It just doesn't want to yet, because the public outcry isn't there yet. And the public outcry isn't there yet, and the spiritual balance, they haven't made enough ruckus. If there comes a day that they ever stick their nose up and they make a noise, well, certain churches will start disappearing very quickly. Yoink, 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 yoink. They'll pull the status, silences the other churches and the other mosques and the other temples, and they'll all fall in line. And we're already slaves. So Canada is very anti-religion, or we're not anti-religion, it's just all our religious organizations have become charitable organizations. And now are the governments. So they do it because they love money. I've never heard a pastor say otherwise. I have no idea why you would become a charitable organization. Convert all your private assets to public. So if you had $10,000, you're a small tiny church, and you have $5,000, you're an internet church. Maybe a small operation. Let's say me, I'm running an operation, I got some computer equipment, whatever, $10,000. Let's say at a certain point, I say, hey, you want to know what? I'm getting a bigger now. I want to start issuing. I want to get more donations. I should be charity status. It's the blind leading the blind. I don't know any different. Every church becomes a charity, right? So I should become a charity too. I become a charity. My $10,000 worth of computers that was private now becomes the government's. So if I grow to 20, 30, 40, 50,000, $100,000 operation, $1 million operation, the government owns it all now. And if at any time, let's say I'm a small operation, I grow to a $50,000 a year operation. I'm pulling in $50,000 of donations. Yes, I tax receipt those to people, so they get usually 25% or so, give or take average, tax receipt on their income tax. It's not even 100%, it's a percentage. Then, and then I'm like, I do my taxes. As a charity, you always have to fill in all your taxes every year, and they're online. So if you go online, you can search CRA Charity, find your local church, and find their name. You can see their taxes. And if they don't fill in their taxes, they can pull my status. If I'm late, they can pull my status. If I do them wrong, they can pull my status. they threaten to pull your status, and then you line up. And sometimes churches lose their status temporarily, and then they freak out and get lawyers involved, and then they fix their problem, and they, yes sir, no sir, and they stand in line, step in line again with the CRA, and then they're back on the good list of the CRA, because they don't want to lose their status, because they know if you lose, if I had my $50,000 a year operation, and I lost my, if I started saying stuff that I wasn't allowed to say, and the government wanted to shut me down, if I was promoting a new party, if I was bashing current presidents, prime ministers, because it's our country or any other country, if I was against slavery in Saudi Arabia, and I was sending missionaries, you know, we raise funds to stop slavery in Saudi Arabia, I can have my status removed. And all my assets taken, all my computer equipment taken. Because it's all public. Because I'm a charity. Or I can have my $10,000 operation, keep asking for donations, start up a business, you know, you start up a business model, you register it as normal income, but guess what? If I have $50,000 income and $30,000 expenses, well, okay, then the business only made $20,000 that year. Fine, pay your taxes on that. Small amount of taxes, and I can say whatever the hell I want to say. Or be a charity, and you have to follow the rules of the CRA, and none of your assets are yours. And you're walking on eggshells for the rest of your life. So if I have my $50,000 assets, and then I'm like getting in trouble, I'm like, oh man, I can't be a charity anymore. Or I want to say, well, I want to practice my freedom of religion. Well, I can't as the organization, as a charity. So if I had $50,000 of computer equipment and whatnot, or no, I said $30,000, say in that example, $30,000 of computer equipment, then the government says, okay, you owe us 100% of 100% of your value. And you have to pay it in less than a year. So I'd have to raise $30,000 just to buy the computer equipment I currently have. And these are small numbers, but it seems stupid. It gets even worse when you actually deal with land. Like I feel sorry for any church that actually owns any land, because they will be forever almost enslaved to the love of money. If we can catch them when they're small, there might be a bunch of churches willing to walk away from all their assets and be a real church. But I doubt it. Most of them will love their money. But that being said, I know that if we vote in our Fair Tax Act, and that means we get rid of the income tax, that actually doesn't mean, that means that their taxable receipts are pointless. Therefore, the whole status and holding them to the rules of being a charity aren't needed, so I could free up billions and billions of dollars of every religious organizations across Canada. And I actually had a spreadsheet open, it was crazy. Do I even have it still? I was breaking it all down, right? I was breaking down, I have $12.6 billion in assets, right? I have every Anglican parish church. I have every Catholic church. I have, what other church? I have how much Presbyterian, Roman Catholic, other denominations. I have, because they have 40 or 50 denominations under the CRA. Salvation Army temples. I know how much money every single temple makes. And I could free up all their assets. I know how much land they have. I know how much building assets. I know how much, their income is. So if I can convert all their assets from private to public, or from public to private, I'd want your vote. Why don't we free up our organizations? Community organizations, Jehovah's Witnesses, Sikhs, there's Islam there somewhere too. Religious, mission, oh, hang on. I think I was in RM, Mormons, Hindus, different missionary organizations, I guess. Lots of different names. I have it all listed in a giant spreadsheet. United Church, synagogues, so that's like Jewish, Seventh-day Adventists. Every one of them belong to the government. So by voting for me, supporting me, later on, way before this, I was going to start up this I literally wanted to start. I was so close to having a weekly channel. I had guest speakers. I already started speaking. I have a couple other channels. If you search for Church versus Charity, or hang on, let me Google that here. I had a couple other channels that I started to build out. If you're Church versus Charity. I had one channel called Church versus State. Here, I'll type that in. Okay, that's Church versus State channel. Some videos on this topic about that. I was calling it like Church versus State because I was kind of like playing on the church versus, or state versus religion, or separation of church and state. I was kind of playing on those two words. But then I've actually switched it over to, I got a playlist on there. And I had different websites that I've kind of lapsed and things like that, but I did a lot of research years ago. So there's Church versus Charity, and then, oh no, hang on. That was Church versus State, but then there's Church versus Charity. Let me see here. Church versus State. The Fair Tax Act. Church versus Charity. I actually haven't opened that channel or videos yet. Yeah, so right now it's mostly Church versus State. But it will be Church versus Charity, I think, is what I'll change that to. So, anyways, that's that. It's getting close to 9 o'clock. We'll be wrapping up here shortly. I want this to be a regular session. And for the election, I will potentially accept donations for my party to help run a better campaign this election, this next 30-some days. Other than that, I will have something where it will be raising funds for this particular topic. And maybe I will talk about this topic weekly. So, anyways, that's kind of that. And general play. But yeah, so right now it's not quite up yet, but you will be able to say will be live later tonight, I believe. But CHPKevin.ca. Oh. CHP Kevin is the website. Yeah. You would think I should be able to put links into my own chat, but that's okay. So CHP Kevin. So it's good having everybody, and started streaming a while ago. How did my Facebook channel do? Huh. That's not good. Oh, hang on. My Facebook channel was running. Good talking to everybody. So, that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap up here a couple minutes early here, right before 9 o'clock. It was awesome. CHP Kevin on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Actually, will be Twitch. Right now it's Kevin Schulthies on Twitch. I will probably be updating that to CHP Kevin. And I'm streaming it over my two phones, but I'm also going to attempt to do it live via OBS. So if I have to do it from here, then I can actually not just do it from my phone, but then I have control over my whole stream and show you different video windows and have a much better production value. So, okay, guys, it was an absolute pleasure. See you guys next Sunday night. You're welcome to comment, question, need your help. If you're interested in helping for the upcoming election in Canada, as a Canadian citizen, you would be allowed to donate to myself. Right now, you'd have to donate to chpk.ca and say you want to donate to Kevin. And go from there. But that's for money. But most important, need your prayers, your thoughts. Need your manpower too. That'd be kind of nice. That'd be kind of cool. Need to kind of door knock, get the name out. But mostly it's funds, because right now I'm running a small digital campaign. I don't expect much, but it'd be nice to have a few hundred flyers if we're door knocking, be able to hand out. People ask, go from there, and just have that personal touch. Okay, guys, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.